It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I am Iron Man.
I'm Pickle Rick!
I have a dream.
I am your father.
I'm Sean Spencer. This is my partner, Gus Silly Pants Jackson.
I'm gonna show you how great I am.
God bless America.
Avengers!
Assemble.
That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that tune. When I'm back on top in June.
I said that's life, and as funny as it seems. If that's not catchy, then listen, I don't know what the definition of catchy is. Welcome back to Life, you humans. On today's episode, this is gonna be one of my favorites just for the simple fact that I absolutely love everything about this. And I mean, ever since I was 6 or 7, I can remember having a fascination, having a love to study it. Today, we're gonna talk about Egypt! For those of you who thought it was alcohol or cars, I'm sorry. Those are episodes that are on the way, but that is not what we're doing today. So before you shut it off, I promise you this episode is going to be a lot of fun, if that entices you to come back. But no, we do have some great episodes coming up. So make sure you're following That's Life with Jacob. It's super simple. At That's Life with Jacob on social media, at That's Life with Jacob on social media, so you can stay up to date with everything I have going on, enjoy exclusive videos to our TikTok and to our Instagram, exclusive content that you get nowhere else but our social media, so at That's Life with Jacob. All right, now let's talk about Egypt. Ancient Egyptian civilization has lasted for more than 3,000 years, which is more than 15 times the age of the United States. From its rulers to its architect, Egypt has had the largest impact on today's culture. So join me as we explore the deserts of Cairo, up the Nile River, and in to the heart of Egypt. All right, well, if you enjoyed that intro, then imagine 7-year-old Jacob sitting crisscross applesauce, 7:30 on a Saturday morning, watching the History Channel, eating a bowl of Waffle Crisp, which was the world's greatest cereal. To this day is still the world's greatest cereal. If you've never tasted Waffle Crisp, it is because it is discontinued. I'm pretty sure it was poisoning children from how much sugar was in it, but still the greatest cereal of all time. Every Saturday morning, though, sitting down, watching the History Channel, watching my Egypt documentaries, and they all started that exact same way. Today, we venture into Cairo. So I thought it'd be fun to recreate that. But like I said, I have been obsessed with Egyptian culture in Egypt for as long as I can remember. I remember going to the History Museum in Chicago as a kid and just sitting in the Egyptian section for literally hours. I can remember my parents paying an extra $55 just so I could see King Tut's tomb as it passed through Chicago. I remember honestly, one of the biggest Egyptian things that is a big part of my life and a big part of my family's life are the Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser. If you've not seen the Mummy movies, how dare you listen to this episode, okay? The Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, well, I take that back. 1 and 2 of the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies are fantastic. They are works of art. Those are such big influences on my life as a child for a couple reasons. One, I was obsessed with Egypt, and O'Connell was like my spirit animal. I wanted to just go adventure and fight mummies as a kid. Number two, the reason they were so prevalent in my household was my mom had a massive man crush on Brendan Fraser. The Mummy Brendan Fraser, not 2022 Brendan Fraser. Just so we're very distinct and clear on that one. Just so when my mom listens, I just wanted to clarify that it's definitely the Mummy Brendan Fraser. Okay, Mom, I got your back. But like, those movies are so fun. They're classic adventure movies. Universal literally has a ride called The Mummy that has been a staple. It's like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, but in Universal. It's just a staple of what's in Universal now. And one of my favorite lines from the first movie is I'm so many people have not seen it, and it blows my mind, because if you see it, then you're probably laughing out loud when I tell you this line, because you understand the scenario. So there's this character named Benny, which is just basically like a weasel. You want to punch him in the face. Spoiler alert, he finally gets his comeuppance. And I'm sorry I spoiled the movie, but it's also like 25 years old at this point. But anyways, O'Connell's the good guy, and they're on their way. They're racing to Egypt. And Benny goes, "Hey, O'Connell, looks like I've got all the horses." And he goes, "Hey, Benny, looks like you're on the wrong side of the river." And if you've seen this movie, then you absolutely know what I'm talking about, and you're dying laughing, because that is one of the best movie lines of all time. The second one, though, is so good, too. It has... I am a enthusiast for schlock. I like schlock, dumb fantasy, of course. But the second movie has Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing the Scorpion King. And at the end of the movie, he turns into a 25-foot scorpion. No, yeah. Your hearing is working just fine. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. His whole upper torso and his face are Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And the rest of his body is a giant scorpion. So if you want to watch Brendan Fraser duke it out with Dwayne "The Scorpion" Rock Johnson, then turn on The Mummy Returns. If you've not seen these movies, I'm begging you, please, go watch The Mummy. Go watch The Mummy Returns. The third one, throw it away. It was done just basically to get everybody a paycheck. But the first two Mummy movies are so good. And if you haven't seen them and you do watch them, I want you to please DM me your reviews on 1 and 2. And I'm going to post that on our social media. But like, those are big influences from Egyptian culture for me as a kid. I don't know if Egypt actually claims those movies, but they should, because they're fantastic. But like I said, Egypt is very unique in the sense that Egypt really has impacted the world that we live in today more than I think we know. Egypt, being able to reign for over 3,000 years is already something remarkable. But Egypt was so ahead of its time in architecture. Egypt was so ahead of its time in innovation. Egypt was so ahead of its time in its sciences and its religions and its leadership practices that the world literally paid attention to Egypt so they could learn how to catch up and they could learn how to expand and grow their empires. I don't believe that if Egypt isn't around, that a lot of these other empires, the Roman empires, places like that, would have grown and become who they were without Egypt. I mean, Egypt was the largest trading country in the history of the world up until like 1980 something. They at that point, and up until like 1980, 85, they had the largest recorded trading in history. Of course, they used the Nile to go all throughout the continent of Africa, but they stretched all the way up to Denmark. There's been rumors that they stretched all the way up to Antarctica and places like that. It's wild how powerful and crazy they really were. So not only did they influence the world and make them have to catch up when it came to the trading market and learn that you can deal with other countries even if they're not your allies, I find that very interesting. Look at what Egypt did with its architecture. And with its sciences. Egypt is one of the most advanced civilizations of all time. Look at the pyramids. Now, first off, I'm not going to get into it in this podcast, but the pyramids might have been built by aliens or giants. The Bible does talk about giants. I don't know. Well, that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they did use nothing but human pain and suffering to build all of those. It still takes a remarkable amount of infrastructure, a remarkable amount of innovation to do what they've done. Structures that they still have standing today. There's structures that baffle today's scientists. Today's world-class scientists are baffled by what Egypt was able to do in their time and things that they say that they still have no recollection how Egypt accomplished half of what they did. But as I said, they've impacted the world not only in trade and made the world learn that, hey, you have to build up your trading infrastructure, but if you don't think that they've impacted the United States in several ways, not only just in architecture, not only in just the sciences, not only in just innovations, You go to Target this afternoon. Go to Target, do me a favor. Go to Target this afternoon. Go up to the counter. I don't know what's bougie that people buy at Target. Go buy your gluten-free shaving cream or whatever the hell you people buy at Target. Leggings. Seems like something that people buy at Target. First off, no one grocery shops at Target. Can we definitely make that clear? I walked into Target the other day to get a fancy shirt, and I saw a guy like straight up grocery shopping. I'm like, homeboy, Walmart, Kroger, Costco, Sam's Club, literally anywhere else but Target. But back to my story. Go to Target. Pick out your leggings, pick out your gluten-free shaving cream, get your vegan grapes, I don't know, whatever fancy schmancy crap that Target sells. Go up to the counter and pay with cash. Do me a favor, examine that dollar bill. What's on there? Oh, that's right, a pyramid. So you don't think that Egypt impacted American culture? Your dollar bills literally have the pyramids on them. Egypt was so powerful in its trading infrastructure, was so powerful in its innovation, that it literally made the world itself change. It's crazy to think, but they really did. And I just find it quite remarkable that Egypt's imprint still is on the world today, all the way in 2022. It's so cool to think about. All right, like I said, I don't really have bullet point plans for today's episode. Usually I have a bullet point agenda that I type up, and I'm very meticulous by following it, because otherwise what I do is I just start ranting. And many of you are like, yes, we know, for the love of God, stop. So I try and keep myself on track a little bit, but today I'm just kind of free-flowing. Just things I want to talk about with Egypt. Let's talk about some of Egypt's most impressive structures. And of course, we have got to start with the Pyramids of Giza. The Pyramids of Giza, the most well-known structure maybe in the entire world, is actually, fun fact, I know this because I'm a big nerd. Did you know that out of the 7 wonders of the world, the Pyramids of Giza are the only remaining intact structure of the 7 wonders of the world? The only remaining intact structure. If that doesn't show you Egyptian innovation at its highest level, I don't know what will. That is remarkable to think about. But the Pyramids of Giza are actually not the only pyramids that have been found in Egypt. In fact, there is over 130 different pyramids that have been found scattered across the plateaus of Egypt over the past several years. And the pyramids were built as the ultimate resting place and the ultimate worship place for the passing of these pharaohs, for the passing of these kings and these queens. And it's quite remarkable that the Pyramids of Giza have still yet to be completely discovered. You see, the way Egypt kept its kings safe and kept their treasure safe, because they thought that they could take all of this stuff to the afterlife with them, all their gold, their treasures, their jewelry, their diamonds, is they built several different tunnels. It was like a maze inside of a maze inside of a maze. And a lot of these tunnels and airways and walkways and crawl spaces have crumbled over the years on the inside. So we have yet to really completely discover and explore the entirety of the Pyramids of Giza. And in fact, they're saying roughly 7 to 8 different rulers of Egypt are still missing to this day that are supposedly from manuscripts in the Pyramids of Giza, but we do not have the ability to go in there and explore without damaging the actual Pyramids of Giza. Just another little side fun fact for you. But another interesting fact is that the pyramids are thought to be constructed of over 2 million stone blocks that range from 2 to over 50 tons. Though it remains a mystery as to how they were transported, historians estimate that over 100,000 people were involved in the construction of the Pyramids of Giza, and that they may not all have been slaves as previously thought of, as there are paper records of people being paid to work on the pyramids. That's where I venture off into the wild and into the crazy. Historians have no earthly idea how these pyramids were constructed. Best they can guess is that 100,000 people were thrown at it, and that's it. That's as much information as they can gander over the thousands and hundreds of years of this being studied. And the only reason they can kind of estimate how many people were there is just by the amount of remains of bodies that were buried around the buildings of the Pyramid of Giza. So they're not even sure. And like I said, this is where my brain starts to get into that gray area. Listen, the Bible talks about giants all throughout the Old Testament. It talks about giants in the land of Canaan. 12 men went to spy on Canaan, 10 were bad and 2 were good. Right? It talks about giants running that land. So, I'm not going to dive too far into it. But we know that the pyramids were constructed in BC. They were constructed around the Old Testament times. I'm not saying that giants were involved. All I'm saying is that it seems like it would take a giant to build the pyramids. Because even famous historians and famous scientists and famous innovators of today's society have been pondering the question, how the hell did these things get built? How? How? I'm not claiming that giants did it, but I'm claiming that either giants or aliens built the pyramids. And here's what's also interesting about those facts is that giants and alien-like ships and structures and faces were carved into ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. You don't believe me? Look it up. I promise you it's there. You're talking to a Egyptian nerd here. But I just find it interesting. And I'm giving you information. You do with it what you want. Okay? I'm not saying giants built the pyramids. I'm not saying aliens built the pyramids. I'm just saying that historians and scientists and innovators of today, with the greatest technology known to man, still have no earthly idea how these pyramids were built. All I'm saying is maybe a little E.T. or maybe a little fee fi fo fum. What Egyptian structure you come from, right? I'm just saying that something seems like it's a little fishy here. 100,000 people would have to. It's just trying to wrap my brain around stacking those 50-ton blocks. It just doesn't make sense without some sort of outside help. And unless they had cranes back then I'm going to go with that there were some helping hands. Whether those were human hands, whether those were giant hands, I'll leave that up for you to decide. Despite the scorching heat, the temperature inside the pyramids are often a constant 20 Celsius below the average temperature of the Earth. Those limestones are so massive, it's very hard for heat to really penetrate it all the way through. And in fact, the stones that were used have a lot of bright reflective material. And over time, of course, the sand and the weather has deteriorated a lot of that. But when the pyramids were first built, they were actually bright, shiny objects that could be seen for hundreds of miles. That's not even on this. That's just stupid knowledge that I have in my head. They looked like literally 3 diamonds way off into the distance. It was really cool. You can go on YouTube and they have some really cool videos that show that perspective. It's quite remarkable. All the pyramids in Egypt were built on the west bank of the Nile in order for the sun to set on them every single day, symbolizing life after death. This is what's so intriguing about Egypt for me and Egyptian culture, is everything that the Egyptians did was building towards the afterlife. They were so bound in religion. I mean, they're more religious than Orthodox Jews. They're more religious than the most religious person you could possibly think of. They were bound. Life, death, everything was building towards their afterlife. Whether it was the buildings that they built, whether it was the food that they ate, the way that they walked, the way that they cut their hair, the way that they cut their beards, they were so strict with their religion. And even something so simple as the placement of the pyramids meant something so much more to them. And of course, symbolizing life after death. They believed in the afterlife, that you would be reincarnated. And we're going to talk about mummies and all that here in just a second. But that's something that's so fascinating to me, is how important their religion was. All right, let's read one more fact here about the pyramids, then we'll go on to a different structure. every pyramid had been robbed of its treasure by 1000 BC. You know, the Egyptians believed that their pharaohs should be buried along with their treasures and sometimes even with their slaves. Hence, you know, gold, jewelry, clothing, etc. were put into the tombs with these mummies and with the pharaohs. However, over the years, rulers of the kingdom have destroyed the pyramids and taken these jewels and valuables back to their own respective kingdoms. Although the pyramids are very hard to damage, smaller pyramids were targeted and their riches were plundered. One such example of this can be seen in the Great Pyramid of Giza. There is evidence of a failed break-in, and the deep hole that was made in the pyramid structure is still visible from the outside today. You know what's so crazy about the pyramids of Giza is we know that there are so many different tunnels and so many different hallways and so many different crevices that we need or that we'd want to explore, but we can't explore due to being booby-trapped and due to the actual structure of the pyramid, is what I was talking about. And that's why I really wish, all right, let me go see the pyramids in person, and then let's just rip them apart. Nah, I don't mean actually rip them apart, but I would love to go in there and explore what all hasn't been found in the pyramids of Giza. That's what was so remarkable about the big pyramids, is there were so many trapdoors, so many hidden doorways. In fact, when they first started exploring the pyramids of Giza, they found hundreds of bodies where people had gotten trapped, where people, oh, could you imagine that I'm claustrophobic, but imagining that death being squeezed in between stone walls, not being able to get out. You know, the doors on the pyramids were over 20 tons, so it was basically impossible to ever get out. And so it's just so remarkable that these big pyramids have lasted and that there's so much stuff still yet to be discovered in Egypt. I mean, we're still finding bodies in the valleys of the kings with untouched graves and untouched tombs. That's how innovative they were. But a lot of these smaller tombs were, of course, easier to raid because they weren't built with, and a lot of these smaller tombs didn't carry the wealthy pharaohs or didn't carry the big wealthy rulers. So, I mean, I would love to be an archaeologist and just go explore in Egypt. But that is a few interesting facts about the pyramids. And let's look up what other structures do I want to talk about. There's a bunch of them. I'm trying to dwindle them down to let's get one more here because there's quite a bit I want to talk about. Let's talk about the Valley of the Kings, because that's another pretty prominent one. So the reason the Valley of the Kings came about was the pyramids were basically "come rob me" signs, just like we had just talked about. I mean, the pyramids were a 7-Eleven with the cash register open, 10:30 at night, in Southside Chicago. They were the easiest, biggest thing to rob. I mean, they were giant "come rob me" triangles. And you know, even though the pyramids of Giza aren't completely picked over and completely explored, quite a bit of the loot had been plundered from all of the pyramids around there and even in the pyramids of Giza. So they had decided that, hey, we need to protect our great kings and our great pharaohs even more. So that is where the Valley of the Kings came into place. So the Valley of the Kings was a 3-story doorway to an unknown number of tombs and catacombs and caverns. We have absolutely no idea how many tombs are still out there. We're discovering new ones every single year. Over 120 different tombs have been found. Over 63 prominent tombs have been discovered, meaning, you know, pharaohs, kings or high servants, high political figures in the time. So only 63 prominent tombs have been found. Over 120 tombs have been discovered overall. A lot of those tombs being, you know, of slaves or prominent family members, or even tombs that had just stored certain animals that the families held in high regard. But there's projected to be somewhere around 300 to 400 different tombs in the Valley of the Kings. We still are discovering, like I said, to this day, new tombs in different catacombs. And the way that the Egyptians had structured it is it looks like a tree root. Quite honestly, you could go straight into a chamber and then it could branch off into 7, 8, 9 different chambers running miles and miles deep. And it's a very hard thing to explore, considering with all the different, and especially with the structure and with, you know, earthquakes and such, and with weather. I'm sure that a lot of these tombs have collapsed, and unless we literally just dug, we're never going to discover all that the Valley of the Kings has to offer. But the Valley of the Kings, or the Valley of the Gates of the Kings, is a valley which is believed to be the burial place of the greatest pharaohs of all time. At first, the pyramids were only used as tombs for the kings, but after several, and like we just discussed, after several robberies and plundering, around 1500 BC, the practice was changed to protect the royal figures as well. Archaeologists have found over 63 tombs and over 120 different chambers and tombs, ranging in different sizes depending on the prominence of the person buried in that tomb. The walls of the underground tombs are decorated with graffiti in various languages and hieroglyphs that depict ancient Egyptian culture of its time. The most remarkable mausoleum, which was excavated here, was that of King Tutankhamun, King Tut. And I told you, I actually got to see King Tut's sarcophagus in Chicago. To this, I mean, it was to see that level of craftsmanship and what they did. It really is breathtaking. The tomb was preserved. The tomb was preserved, and the mummy of King Tut and other precious and well-known artifacts made up of gold and various other materials was found deep in the Valley of the Kings. The Kings has a special place in the history of Egyptian culture due to its great great archaeological wealth that has been found over the years. And I remember, I don't know if you all remember, I remember when King Tut's body was discovered. I remember when they were talking, like when they finally safely got everything out. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand with archaeology and with discovering this stuff is the amount of delicacy and the amount of care that goes into preserving that stuff is insane. Watch a documentary just one time on special paper that they basically paint over the artifacts with to make them hard enough so that they could excavate it out of the dirt. Like, it is a very intense, crazy process, and it took several years to get the remains of King Tutankhamen's tomb completely out of there and intact. And in fact, I was reading not too long ago, or I watched a documentary on it not too long ago. They had 24-hour military protection at all times, including 2 or 3 tanks that would sit outside. Like, that's got to be pretty intimidating for all those grave robbers. You know, they're like, yo, we're about to go score on King Tutankhamen's grave. You know, they just found it, and then you pull down, and there's 3 tanks waiting for you. But the Valley of the Kings is like I said, there's still so much to be discovered with it. All right, I want to talk a little bit about mummification. And I know some of you are going to start queasing. Some of you are going to probably turn off the podcast. You can't handle it because it might get grotesque here. And I don't have a strong stomach. Many of you who know me know that I gag at the sight of I can't even really mention throw up without starting to gag. Or if you drink a Celsius. Celsius is the most disgusting carbonated drink I've ever had in my life. And I wrote the company and asked them to please shut down, but they ignored me. But yeah, mummification was the preserving of the body. Because the Egyptians believed so much in the afterlife, they believed that the body and the burial process was the most important thing to set them up right. It wasn't how they lived. It wasn't how they ruled. It was the burial process that would set them up for a greater life after actual life. And so that's why these kings were buried with all the remarkable jewels. They were buried with their favorite toys. They were buried, King Tutankhamun was buried with his favorite toy boat that we still that we discovered and have in the Cairo Museum. Like, they were buried with their most not their favorite things, but they were buried with the most prominent things that they had of the time, or the things that they cherished the most. So the mummification process is quite intense. So just forewarning you, we're going to get into it. So if you want to shut off the podcast now, thank you for listening. If not, let's move forward into how they would mummify and why they mummified. As I said, the process of mummification was to send somebody into the afterlife the right way. You see, the only way that the Egyptians thought someone could reach the afterlife was if their soul could recognize and repossess their body after death. The Egyptians believed that the only way to do this was through the process of mummification. This is why they spent several days, and it was such a long process to mummify the body, and they dealt with it with such great care so that their soul would have something to return to. In fact, pharaohs would start preparing for the afterlife their first day in power. That kind of seems like a smack in the face, doesn't it? Like, or would just put me on edge and be terrified that someone's trying to kill me. If the first day on the job, they're like, yo, like, congratulations, King Tut, bro, you did it. You in power, son. What's up, son? And they're just like, by the way, we're going to bring in like 20 or 30 gold coffins. If you just want to choose which one you want to be buried in, that'd be pretty tight. We're going to bring in some different linens. If you could see which one of these you want to wrap around your face for when we mummify your body, that'd be cool too. And be like, hold up, like, would you like a glass of wine, sir? It's like, I don't trust that wine. Am I being poisoned right now? Why am I picking out my death stuff day one? I just got into power. I'm 14 years old. Like, what is this? But that's how important they thought that the afterlife was, that you literally prepared for it from the day you got into power. So that is why they did the mummification process. Now let's talk about how they did the mummification process. And when I mean how, I mean a literal step-by-step guide on how to mummify somebody. Okay? I don't know why at 10 o'clock at night the other night when I was detailing this out, I was like, this is such a good idea. I'm going to do this. I don't know why, but we're here. It's going to happen. You're going to know how someone got mummified. You're going to know the entire process. And I remember, the mummification process lasted for like 80 or 90 days. This was no small feat. Like, it was like half a year's process. It was like 80 to 90 days before they even did the burial process. It was like 120 total days for the mummification process to be complete and for them to be put to rest. So can you imagine the smells of you're mummifying this person and then you're just letting them dry out and for like 70 days at a time so that way you can stuff it. Oh, good. All right, let's get into it, okay? This is the step-by-step process on how to mummify somebody. Step number 1, insert a hook through a hole near the nose and pull out part of the brain. Step number 2, make a cut on the left side of the body near the tummy. Step number 3, remove all internal organs. Step number 4, let the internal organs dry. Step number 5, place the lungs, the intestines, the stomach, and the liver inside canopic jars. Step number 6, place the heart back inside the body. Kind of seems redundant to rip it all out, then put it right back. Number 7, rinse inside the body with wines and spices. I'm sorry, what? Rinse inside, no, that's exactly what it says. Rinse inside the body with wines and spices. Hey, we gotta mummify this dude. Could you grab me the Merlot and the oregano? Yeah, just the Merlot and oregano. We gonna clean this dude out real quick. Now, I don't even know what number 1. Number 7, number 8. Cover the corpse with salt and let it sit for over 70 days. After 40 days, you would stuff the body with linens and sands to give it more human shape. Oh, gosh, that's disgusting. What happened to just good old-fashioned cotton? You know? Like, they're basically human stuffed animals. Could you imagine, like, hey, can you go grab me a pitcher of sand? We need to make sure that this dude's foot's a little more thick. He's looking a little thin here. Like, oh gosh. It's like you're molding a person back into a person. Oh, God. After 70 days, wrap the body from head to toe in its bandages. Then, finally, place in its sarcophagus for its final resting place. If the person was a pharaoh, he'd be placed inside a special burial chamber, of course, lots of treasures and things that he cherished. So there it is. That is the mummification process from head to toe. No pun intended. And to wrap this show up, no pun intended, I'm just going to give you a couple crazy facts about Egypt just for fun. I hope that, this episode's been fun. There's so much I could talk about with Egypt, and in fact, not to spoil any awesome stuff, but I am in talks with somebody who's an archaeologist, hoping that I can get them on the podcast. It's very difficult considering that it's daytime over there when it's nighttime over here, and it's nighttime over here when it's daytime over there, and it's just really difficult to get somebody when they're in Egypt. But I would love to try and get somebody on, so I'm really working hard on that for an Egypt part 2. But let's end with some crazy facts about Egypt, okay? Get your mind off of just murder, death, mummification, burial, okay? Now, some of these facts that we're about to mention, we've actually talked a little bit about already, so I won't harp on those ones too much. Number one, the fact that the pyramids weren't entirely built by slaves. I mentioned that earlier. In fact, a lot of prominent families in Egypt at the time, and a lot of people were paid to build the pyramids. In fact, they found many, money transaction slips from workers from the pharaoh's treasury of where they were being paid to build the pyramids. And in fact, a lot of the prominent families in the day, their entire families legacy was built on them building the pyramids. Also, no pun intended. So just a super interesting fact because, of course, we're taught that the pyramids were built by nothing but slaves. Number two, the pyramids of Giza are not the biggest pyramids in the world. The pyramids of Giza may be the tallest and most well known, but the biggest pyramid in the world is actually found in Mexico and is measured 450 meters by 450 meters at its base. The Great Pyramid of, not trying to pronounce that name, also known as not trying to pronounce that name. I can't pronounce the name that it should be called, and I can't pronounce the name that it's known as secondly. But nonetheless, it wasn't until the 1930s when they started excavating around the temple and digging out around it that they found out that this temple was in fact the largest pyramid in the world. Ancient Egyptian women had a lot of privileges. That's super interesting because you would not think that would be a thing. Ancient Egyptian women had more rights and privileges than most other women in the ancient world. For example, they could own property, they could carry out their own business dealings, and they could initiate divorce. Whoa. Women from wealthy families could even become doctors or priestesses. In Egypt, men and women are equivalent. Their social statuses were treated as equals in the eyes of the law. This meant that women could own, earn, buy, sell, and inherit all of their own goods and properties. They could live unprotected by male guardians, and if widowed or divorced, could raise their own children without any qualms. They could bring cases before and be punished by the laws in the courts, and they were expected to be deputized for an absent husband in the matters of all businesses. Now that blows my freaking mind because, especially back then, ladies, it wasn't going too great for you, okay? Yeah, I mean, you weren't allowed to respond. If someone asked you a question, you would get punched in the face for responding to that question. And I know that's extreme, but that is quite remarkable. I mean, Egypt is like what society should be. I mean, they knew it all the way back then. They're just like, no, everybody's equal. Everybody has the same rights. Like, we want to talk about, societies need to catch up with the times and, people need to be, men and women need to be equal. And we need to fight for equal rights, equal pay. Listen, let's just go back to the history books and do exactly what Egypt did. They got it right the first time. I mean, good on you, Egypt, okay? You might have done a lot of terrible things, enslaved innocent people, murdered innocent people, gave the Jews a whole lot of hell for absolutely zero reason, which are God's chosen people. But at least you understood that men and women were equal, okay? All right, Egyptians loved their cats. Cats were considered sacred. For ancient Egyptians, having a cat purring in your house would guarantee you good luck. They were so fond of cats, in fact, that if one was killed, even accidentally, it resulted in the death penalty of its owner. What the hell? So you're telling me if my cat runs into the road and gets run over, I die for it? My cat animals are stupid. Animals, what happens if a pack of wild llamas or a pack of wild camels just come trampling around the corner, step on Fido? Next thing you know, I'm being put to death because Fido don't know how to run away from camels? Like, bro, y'all take this stuff way too seriously. Ancient Egyptians even shaved off Ancient Egyptians shaved off their eyebrows when their cats died to mourn its loss. Oh no. You going to work on like a Tuesday and you're just like, yo, did you see Raymond? Nah, bro, what happened to Raymond? No eyebrows, bro. Oh, hell no, bro. He lost Garfield. Oh, no. Oh, okay, let's read a couple more here. Much of the Egyptian land is unused. In fact, 99% of Egypt's population lives in just 5% of the land, most of that land being near the Nile River, as most of the other land is inhabitable desert that is only inhabited by certain tribes and villagers. That is a crazy amount. 99% of people live in 5% of the population. That is a hard, like, if you hate somebody, it's very hard to get away from them because everybody lives beside you. Let's move on. The practice of mummification didn't actually start in Egypt. Of course, when you think of Egypt, you think of mummies, you think of the mummification process, you think of King Tutankhamun's casket. However, the process of mummification was actually first practiced religiously by a tribe in South Africa known as the Chinchorro. I don't know if that's how you say it, but it sounds really cool. About 2,000 years prior to the Egyptians doing it. The Egyptians evolved it and made it their own, a process which took around 70 to 120 days when it was intended to help guide their people into the afterlife, whereas the other mummification process would take 2 to 3 days. All right, let's go a few more here for you. Hippos were hated by the Egyptians. Hippos were considered bad omens and were associated with the evil god Seth. Seth. For those of you who don't know, my best friend in the world, his name is Seth, and I didn't know that he was an evil hippo now. That's his new nickname, Evil Hippo. They were more dangerous than crocodiles, and they often capsized many boats traveling on the Nile River. In fact, King Tut may have even been killed by a hippopotamus. Some Egyptologists believe that King Tut might have been killed by a hippopotamus. Ancient Egyptians hunted the animal for sport, and statues found in King Tut's tomb even depicted him throwing harpoons at hippopotamuses. Very interesting, very weird. Hippos are also the deadliest animal in the entire world, so I get it, okay? Forensic fingerprinting powder originated in Egypt. The dust powder that they use on CSI to identify the culprit through their fingerprints, well, that's the Egyptian blue, the world's oldest synthetic pigment produced by yours truly, the ancient Egyptians. Of course, literally, when I told you that they've impacted the entire world, they literally have been catching bad guys for us for centuries, okay? Ancient Egyptians invented toothpaste. Oh, I did not know that. Of course, there was no dentist back in the day, but ancient Egyptians contributed to the innovation of dental hygiene with the innovation of toothpaste. Ingredients included the powder of the ox hooves, ashes, burnt eggshells, and pumice. I don't know what pumice is, but I would rather have no teeth than put whatever the hell that mixture is on my teeth. Up until 2015, no Egyptian president had ever left office without dying or being arrested. What? Without dying or being arrested? No, I read that right. Okay. During the age of the pharaohs, the kings and the queens of Egypt reigned until their death. The office of president in Egypt was set up in 1954, and the rulers of the country have, up until 2015, either found themselves assassinated, diagnosed terminally ill while still in office, or being forcibly removed and arrested following a coup d'etat. Well, here's the deal, Egypt. At least you have consistency. At least you know when you elect a president, he's either going to be dead or in jail. Dead or in jail. Hey, what happens in 4 years when his term's up? Oh, he's going to be dead or he's going to jail. All the way up until 2015. Until 2015! Since 1950 to 2015, their leaders have either died, been assassinated, or they've been thrown in jail for being corrupt. I mean, our presidents are just, like Trump somewhere in Florida, Barack Obama somewhere in Florida, George W. Bush is throwing out first pitches at Astros games. Like, you know, Bill Clinton's doing somebody. I mean, like, here's the deal. We have no idea what our presidents are all up to, but at least Egypt knows that their presidents are going to be dead or in jail. All right, that's it. That is the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, let's pray to the moon god of Re that I can get this Egyptian archaeologist on the show. It would be not only a lifelong dream of mine to talk to somebody that is literally an active archaeologist in Egypt right now, but somebody who's actually made some pretty significant discoveries. It would be such a really cool episode and such a big part of why I wanted to do this show, which is to explore and get to talk to amazing people. So let's try and pray that down. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like the show, make sure you're following @That'sLifeWithJacob on social media so you can stay up to date with everything I have going on. Check out other shows like the Animal Kingdom episode, like the Serial Killer, like the Magical Clown episode. So many great episodes. Listen, you might hate the podcast, but I can guarantee you that the subject matter is never going to be boring. So if you want some weird, interesting stuff, make sure you're following me. I love you guys. Thanks for listening. If you love us, share us with a friend that does more for this podcast than you know. Once again, everybody, I'm Jacob Courtwright, and that's life.
That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're right.